No! For those of you who have heard me talk about the Vizards or the captains or the Shinigami in general, you'll know that one of my favourite captains is actually the current captain of the 3rd Division Vizard Rose, Otoribashi. And I feel like that's kind of a weird choice. I don't ever really see him cropping up on anyone's personal favourite lists, and I can't really explain why I like him so much. I just think he's really cool. I think he has a really cool design, particularly in the Thousand Year Blood War arc after he's reinstated as a captain. That's definitely his best look in my opinion. But despite him not really doing anything in the story, and he really doesn't, to be fair, he kind of just gets beaten up a bit, I think the main thing that stands out to me is his Zanpakuto Kinshara, which I really believe is one of the most unique and interesting Zanpakuto in the entire series, both Shikai and Bankai. And we do get to see Rose's Bankai in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, and in my opinion, it's awesome. It's, again, creative, unique, and thematically appropriate for his character for the 3 or 4 pages we actually get to see it. It is not around for long. But in this video I want to discuss his Bankai Kinshara Butodan, see what it does, what I think of it, and yeah, just go over it really. And before we get started, of course, if you are new here, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to hit that button now. Thank you so much for getting us to 50,000 subscribers. That is just an insane number. And I am going to be doing a sort of celebratory video looking at my top 50 Bleach volume covers. I'm still working on that at the moment, really looking forward to that one actually, but thank you guys so much. If you do love Bleach content, you're in the perfect place, so hit that button right now. Also, channel memberships are now available on this channel. You can click the join button below if you want to support the channel, just even a slightly different way than you are doing already. I'd really appreciate that as well. It's nothing majorly serious, and if you don't want to do that, that's absolutely fine. Every video is still going to be dropping on the channel as normal anyway, but either way, I really appreciate the support. So back to Kinshara then, and this is really one of my absolute favourite Zanpakuto in the series. I don't know how else to put it. Every time it was used, I always found it to be really interesting. It was such a nice breakaway from the kind of norm of the rest of the Zanpakuto that we see. Really, Rose is not used that often, so every time we did see him, to me at least, it felt like a breath of fresh air, and that extends to his Zanpakuto as well. Speaking of extending, his Zanpakuto is unique in that it is a whip. Zabimaru is kind of a whip as well, but this is actually a traditional whip. It goes completely gold and it has a flower on the very tip. And in my opinion, it's just, like I said, a really great design that completely stands out from the rest. And in my opinion, I felt like a lot of the Vizard Zanpakuto were like that. Tengumaru as well felt completely different to anything we'd really seen before. But for me, Kinshara is the one that really stands out. When you see it in the Fake Karakura Town arc, it feels a lot kind of, its abilities are sort of nebulous. It's not really explained properly what it can do outside of magical attacks, essentially. With, you know, Rose complaining to Love that art and magic are two very separate things. And his Zanpakuto is art rather than magic, but it does seem like it's basically just using spells, with things like Kinshara Sonata number 11. So we don't ever really get to see those sonatas again in the manga, which is a bit of a shame, but it's not until the Thousand Year Blood War arc, really, where Rose properly, explicitly confirms that his Zanpakuto uses sound, which is really cool, and again, nobody else in Bleach does that, which I really like. So in the second invasion of the Vandenreich, Rose and Kensei are going up against the surprisingly powerful Sternritter S, the superstar masked masculine, and Kensei is getting his ass kicked. And out of nowhere, in chapter 561, Rose uses Bankai, and I remember being just really surprised by this. In retrospect, I probably shouldn't have been. Like I said, Kensei was in the process of getting destroyed, having already used his Bankai, so it made total sense to get Rose's right here, but it really is introduced with absolutely no fanfare whatsoever. There's no build-up to it, and it gets revealed in one page. There's no double-page spread or anything like that. Does kind of reinforce the idea that Rose is a side character at heart, but I'm also just grateful that we actually got his Bankai at all, because Kinshara being so interesting to me, I was always really curious as to what the Bankai might actually be. And I think thematically it is fantastically good. I absolutely love Kinshara Butodan. It's definitely up there with my favourite Bankai, which is a video I'd love to make, by the way, a list of my favourite Bankai in the series. Kinshara Butodan is pretty high up. So like I said, this Bankai is actually kind of unique in a way in that it really is not around for long, and it is, like I said, revealed with very little fanfare. It's very similar actually in execution, in my opinion, to Unohana's Bankai, except this time we actually get an explanation of what it does. But much like Unohana's Bankai, it just shows up at the kind of midpoint of a chapter, and then it's used and then just never really talked about again. That's the only time you ever see it. Although I do think this Bankai is handled better overall. But basically, once Mask has beaten up Kensei and Rose has found that he has an opening, he activates Kinshara Butodan, which I believe translates to something like Golden Sai Tree Dance Troupe. And yeah, it's great for someone who's so invested in the arts and is so obsessed with music. Like, one of the defining personality traits of Rose is that he loves music. He's always playing the guitar and stuff like that. I think this Bankai is so perfect for him. Basically, Kinshara, the whip, it seems to elongate. It looks like it's unraveling, but I think it's actually just getting longer and longer and longer. You see it kind of spiraling around, and it basically turns into this set of dancers. And they look really creepy because they all have the flower of Kinshara where their faces should be. And their bodies are like, they're hollow here. There's like nothing in the middle. They kind of build upwards to arms and legs, but there's nothing in the center. Really, really cool. And then the rest of Kinshara appears as two gigantic hands in the sky, one of them wielding a conductor's baton. And yeah, I love the visuals. I wish he'd got a double-page spread, but he didn't. But regardless, I think it looks great. Looks even better in color. I love that gold. Once again, really helping it to stand out from the crowd. We don't get to see Rose himself too clearly during this sequence, unfortunately, but it does look like his Zanpakuto has transformed completely into a baton. He's holding like a little, one of those conductors' batons, like little sticks that they use, and he is using that to command his dance troupe. And that's, again, really cool. It's awesome. I don't know if the massive hands in the sky are following his movements, because you never see them again, but I'm assuming they probably are. Again, this is one of those moments that I think the anime could really expand on and do something really cool with. The whole Master Masculine fight before Renji shows up would really benefit from that. But yeah, so Rose has now summoned this really creepy dance troupe that he is now controlling with the baton. And it kind of fits with Rose. Rose, being the captain of the 3rd Division, is very similar to Kira in some ways. They both have this, not necessarily, like Kira has like an underlying feeling of despair and depression. And while Rose is not necessarily the same as that, he definitely has this, there's something strange about him, something sinister. There's an underlying sense of darkness to him. Wickedness almost, and that does kind of come through with this Bankai, which is really cool. The faceless dancers, for starters, are just really creepy. They look really creepy, but Rose himself kind of takes on almost a new persona when he's using this Bankai, and he kind of, although he does become very talkative, which is something we'll get into in a minute, I do like the things he says, the things about how, you know, he confirms that his Zanpakuto has the power of music and it controls the power of sound. And his sounds have the ability to create illusions that are so real that the people who are affected by them, they believe them themselves, and as long as their hearts believe these illusions to be real, they will then be affected by them as though they are. And we get to see this in full effect. So Rose's Bankai uses 2 abilities that we actually get to see. The first one is called Sea Drift. And basically Rose, you know, controls his dancers, and they all start dancing around Master Masculine. And as they go around him, they create this tempestuous, whirling vortex of water that they then kind of crash into Mask. And Mask feels it as though he's actually being drowned by water. And, you know, it's like completely covering him, and he's getting buffeted on all sides. And so as far as Mask is concerned, it's a water Zanpakuto. And then we get the second ability, Prometheus, where the dancers kind of lift their hands above their head. They summon like this ball of fire. Each of them has one. And then they go to Mask and they kind of just burn him, essentially. They like give him this fireball and it incinerates him. but it's not actually fire. None of it is real. It's all a show, it's all an act, you know, again, playing up this whole theatrical side of his Zanpakuto. But because Mask believes the illusions to be real, their powers activate and he actually gets drenched and he actually gets burned. It's a really cool power that could honestly be really difficult to beat, as long as your wielder doesn't tell your opponent everything about it. Rose, and I get it, this is probably, Kubo probably thought this was the only time we'd ever see this Bankai, so he has to explain it outright, or else we end up with another Unohana situation. But Rose does come across as really stupid. And it's painful because I like Rose, but he literally stands there talking to Mask about how, you know, oh, none of this is real, it's all an act. My ability is based on lies, but as long as you believe my illusions to be true, you'll be affected by them. As long as your heart believes them to be true, you'll be affected by them. Some cool little facts about these abilities he uses. Sea Drift, I believe, is the name of a large-scale composition piece of music by a composer called Frederick Delius, I believe it's pronounced Delius, something like that. And Prometheus is the Greek god of fire, I believe, the Titan god of fire, who was chained essentially to a rock by Zeus for giving humanity the knowledge of fire, essentially. And I really like the way, I'm assuming Kubo did this on purpose, the dancers are essentially giving Master Masculine fire and then he's getting burned for that. I think that's a really, really neat little detail. And the Bankai is just so full of little details crammed into only a few pages max. But then the final moment comes, and Rose says that he has one more ability to use on Master Masculine, Ein Heldenleben, which I believe is German for a hero's life. And Rose seems to imply that this ability is tailor-made for Masked Masculine. You know, a hero's life. Mask, you know, sees himself very much as the hero of his own tale, and everyone he fights are villains. That's the whole theme of this fight. And you never see what it does, and it's a huge shame. And Rose really, this is when Rose's malice seems to properly come out. He gets a crazed look on his face as he lifts the baton. He's about to use this ability, and then we don't get to see it because Mask has already figured out how to stop the Bankai. You know, because Rose has been going on and on and on about how his Bankai's power is sound, and if his enemies hear it, they, you know, fall under the spell. So unfortunately for Rose, yeah, he talked too much, and Mask bursts his own eardrums, rendering Kinshara Butodan completely useless. which really, really sucks. Rose is taken out in about 4 pages after using his Bankai, which I feel like has got to be some kind of record. Although, I mean, I guess Hitsugaya in the Soul Society arc was taken out very quickly as well. Actually, no, there are a few people who were taken out quite quickly after using Bankai for the first time. Mayuri in the Soul Society arc as well. But anyway, that's not important. What's important is Rose gives the game away by just telling Master Masculine everything he needs to know about his power, which is really annoying. But Kubo needed Renji to shine. Regardless of Rose's actions during this fight, Kinshara Butodan itself is a really cool Bankai, in my opinion, and one that really represents its wielder perfectly. I think it's great. It's got that flamboyance, it's got that air of theatricality about it that is all about Rose, but it has that underlying wickedness that kind of goes hand in hand with the 3rd division, and I love that. I love that it passed from Gin to Rose. You know, technically Rose was captain before Gin, but I really like the... And I feel like Rose's wickedness is definitely played up more in the Thousand Year Blood War arc than it ever is before, and that's probably contributed to me really enjoying his design more in this arc. Like when he threatens Najakoop in the first invasion, I love that moment as well. Rose, you know, this is probably the best arc for Rose, as ridiculous as that sounds. I mean, you know, he doesn't really do anything in the Aranka arc, really. I guess you get to see Kinshara, I suppose, but the fact that you get to see Kinshara Butodan in this fight, it's really cool. But yeah, that's essentially everything we know about Rose's Bankai Kinshara Butodan. It is one of my favourites, certainly visually, and I think its abilities are really cool, and it would be interesting to see if it could do anything else other than Sea Drift and Prometheus, and if Ein Heldenleben was actually an ability crafted for Master Masculine. Personally, I think that Ein Heldenleben was probably just going to one-shot Mask. I think that's why Kubo couldn't allow it to be shown. I think it was probably going to be tailor-made for Master Masculine to basically kill him in a single hit, or do something to make Mask believe he was dying, or he was dead, or he stopped his breathing, or something like that. And that's why it couldn't be shown. But while that's definitely a shame, I really enjoyed this Bankai for what it is and the precious little time we got with it. Alright, but that's it for this video, guys. It's a little bit of a shorter one today, just going over Rose's Bankai in the 1000-Year Blood War arc. Let me know in the comments below, of course, did you like Rose's Bankai? Do you think it fits the character? Where does it kind of rank as your kind of favourite Bankais go? And what do you think of Einhilden Leben? Is it an ability specifically made for Mask, and what do you think it can do? Alright guys, but until next time, I'll catch you later. See you then.